This is Fedora 27 with the Xfce desktop. Now, this is the polar opposite of the GNOME desktop. While GNOME is full of new features, Xfce changes very slowly, and this is still version 4.12. 4.14 is on the way, but it hasn't arrived yet. Now, the slow rate of change in Xfce isn't necessarily a defect. It merely means that this is a proven, trusted, stable desktop that works very well for many people and doesn't need an awful lot of change. Still, it's undergoing some changes under the hood, and you can expect to see them materialize from time to time. One thing I want to mention is that I'm using Simple Screen Recorder, and as you can see, unlike with GNOME, it actually fits in the display. You can see the whole window from top to bottom. The first thing I did was go to the RPM Fusion website. It's rpmfusion.org. In order to install the RPM Fusion repositories. Now, I clicked on Enable RPM Fusion on your system. Then I scroll down here to Fedora 22 and later. I copied this command, right-click, copy, went to my terminal emulator, edit, paste. Now I'm going to press enter, and it asks for my password. Press enter. I already have the RPM Fusion repositories installed, so it's not going to do anything. But this is what you would do. And this is not the way the desktop first appeared. I tweaked it considerably, and you can see how to do that in my old video on tweaking Ubuntu. Very little has changed since then. You have an option when you first start using this distribution to have a standard layout or a single blank panel, and I chose the single blank panel. Just to give you an idea, it looks something like this, except that it was white. I'm going to remove it by clicking on the minus sign. So what I did is I moved that to the top, I lengthened it, I shrunk the height. I have the whisker menu over here, and I configured it so that the categories are on the left. I can highlight things by hovering over them. Then I added a few launchers. This one is for the TuneR file manager, this one is for the terminal emulator. This one is for Firefox, which is Firefox Quantum 57, the latest one. And this one is for Simple Screen Recorder. Over here on the right I have the system tray with the Bluetooth. This is the DNF Kagura Update Manager. This is my Wi-Fi network. And as you can see, it's connected. This is the indicator that shows the Simple Screen Recorder is active. Here's a battery indicator, the pulse audio volume control. This is the date and time, and I've tweaked that to show the 12-hour clock and the entire day and date and month and year. And then here's a shutdown button. And then I added another panel at the bottom with the show desktop icon. So For instance, if I have something open, I can show the desktop by clicking on that, and I can then restore it. I'm moving to a different workspace, and in the middle I have a taskbar or window buttons, so that when I open an application, for instance LeafPad, the text editor, it shows the title here, which is untitled in this case. And again, I can click on this and minimize it, click on it again and unminimize it. And on the right I have a workspace switcher with 4 workspaces. This one has nothing in it. This one has nothing in it. This one has simple screen recorder in it. Now let's take a look at the included software. I'm going to go down here, start with accessories. We have the application finder, Catfish file search, clip manager, GNOME disks. The floor is the virtual keyboard. That's in case you want to type on the screen. The calculator, LeafPad, Orage Global Time, passwords and keys, screenshot, Xarchiver, and Xfburn, which is for burning CDs. Under administration, it came with DNF Kagura and the DNF Kagura updater. Now, you may remember that the GNOME desktop came with GNOME software, and I had to download DNF Kagura. This one comes with DNF Kagura, but if I wanted GNOME software, I'd have to download it. And it comes with a firewall, a way to configure the keyboard, a way to change your language settings, print settings, users and groups. Under development, it has Geany, which is a programming-oriented text editor. Under documentation, it has About, Xfce, and the Fedora release notes. Under graphics, it comes with a document viewer, and I installed LibreOffice, so it now has LibreOffice Draw, and it had the Ristretto image viewer. Under Internet, it came with Claws Mail, Firefox, Pigeon Internet Messenger, and Transmission. Under Multimedia, it came with Asunder CD Ripper. I installed MuseScore. Came with the Parole Media Player, with Praha for managing and listening to music. The Pulse Audio Volume Control. I added Simple Screen Recorder from the RPM Fusion repositories, and I added the VLC Media Player also from RPM Fusion. And here's Xfburn for burning CDs. Now, under Office, it came with AbiWord, Claws Mail, Dictionary, Document Viewer, and Gnumeric. I added LibreOffice, and it came with the Orage Calendar and Orage Global Time. Now, under Settings, comes with accessibility, appearance, Bluetooth, kanji preferences, preferences for the kanji input method. It has a way of setting the desktop background and icon behavior. By the way, I got rid of the desktop icons. A way to configure the display settings, file manager, keyboard settings, MIME type editor, mouse and touchpad, network connections, notifications, OpenJDK 8 policy tool, Orage preferences, the way of customizing the panel, power manager, preferred applications, removable drives, Rigel preferences. I would have to do some research before I could tell you what that is. Screensaver, session and startup, settings editor, settings manager, window manager tweaks, workspaces, Xfce panel switch, I'll show you that in a minute, and the Xf dashboard settings. You can also click up here to get to settings, and you have this array of different settings. I don't think they're all in here, but most of them are in here. So now under Systems I have Bulk, Rename, Color, Profile Viewer, Fedora Release Notes again, Gparted, Problem Reporting, SE Linux Troubleshooter, Task Manager, Thunar File Manager, the Xfce terminal, and the Xf dashboard, which I've investigated before. It's a sort of an emulation of the GNOME desktop. Going back to Xfce panel switch, this is similar to what you'll find in Ubuntu Mate, except it's a little less extensive. Now I want to save my current configuration so I don't lose it. So that's backed up here. Now I've pretty much set up my panel to look like GNOME 2, so I'm going to start at the other end. This is Xfce 412, and you highlight that and then click on these little gears, and this is pretty much the way it came, except that it came with a different theme, so the panels weren't black, they were white, but other than that it was very similar to this. Then Redmond, as you might guess, is supposed to look something like Windows, with one panel at the bottom, a Start button, a slightly different menu structure here, and of course a taskbar at the bottom, system tray at the bottom, etc. And then GNOME 2 looks pretty much like what I have. As a matter of fact, I could have used this to get to where I am now and save myself a lot of trouble. You have one panel at the top, very similar to what I described before, and one panel at the bottom. Now if I want to go to my backup, my own configuration again, I highlight that and left click on Apply Configuration. And there's my panel again. So it's now easier to configure Xfce than it was. Now I want to mention something about DNF Kagura. I actually made a mistake in my review of Fedora 27 with the default GNOME desktop, and I said that DNF Kagura did not indicate the architecture of the different packages. But in fact it does, and I put a note under my previous video correcting that. What you have to do is find this very obscure scroll bar down here and scroll way over there to where it says Architecture, Arch, and keeps slipping out of my grasp here. And you can see this shows x86 64 or no arch. And notice I have this set to show x86 64 and no arch only. So it does show the architecture. It could be a little more transparent, however. And if I want to install GIMP, for instance, I'll type that name in the search bar, click on search, and there's GIMP. Now, you notice there's two GIMPs. But if I scroll over here, I see that one is for release 2.fc27.2 and one is for release 2.fc27.3. I'm assuming mine is the second one. So I'm going to try to install that and then click on apply. Gives me the list of everything that will be installed, and so I'm going to click on OK and enter my password. And click on OK. Now it's installing GIMP, as you can see by the progress bar here at the bottom. It's going pretty fast. I have a fairly fast internet connection. Now it's applying changes to the system. And now it seems to be finished. So I'm going to close this, and when I go back to graphics, there's GIMP, GNU Image Manipulation Program. And as usual, it comes in three parts. So the first thing I do is click on Windows and then click on single window mode, and then I maximize it. And that's the way I like it to look. I did have one surprise here. I tried some software that I usually use just to see if it was available. And under Multimedia here, as I mentioned, I have MuseScore in here. But notice it's version 2.0.3. And the version that comes with Ubuntu 17.10 is 2.1. This is one of the rare instances in which the software available in Ubuntu is more up-to-date than the software available in Fedora. Usually Fedora is quite up-to-date and Ubuntu lags a bit because it depends on Debian, and then it further tests what it gets from Debian testing. So Fedora does not always have the latest software. It depends on what software you're actually using. However, for the most part, Fedora is about as up-to-date as you can get. In some cases, it's more up-to-date than Arch. For instance, Firefox 57 was available the very day it was released, which happened to coincide with the day that Fedora 27 was released. It wasn't available until 2 days later in Ubuntu, and it didn't make the Arch repositories as soon as it made Fedora repositories either. So for the most part, Fedora is about as up-to-date as you can get, but in some cases it isn't. One other thing I'd like to point out in regard to Firefox is that, let me go to the home screen here. This top bar had received some remarks about its appearance in the GNOME desktop because the top bar was kind of thick. Actually, it's a lot thinner as it appears in Xfce, and a lot may depend on the theming. In that regard, Xfce has the usual high number of different themes. This is Arc Darker. This isn't the one it came with. Arc Darker Solid, Arc Dark Solid, Arc Solid, Bluebird, Clear Look Classic. I mean, you could literally go on for days changing the theme. I chose Arc Darker. That gave me the dark top bar, but the light field. Now under Window Manager Tweaks, I turned off the compositor. Some people like to leave the compositor on because it prevents screen tearing in videos, but I like to leave it off because I have a fairly lightweight computer and I like to save my resources for other things. If I click on free, right now I'm using 756 megabytes with Simple Screen Recorder. It was about 356 with nothing going. GNOME 3.26 was over 850 something with nothing but the desktop, and about 1300 or so with Simple Screen Recorder going. So this is quite a bit lighter. So if you're interested in Fedora, but you don't want to put up with the hassle and the limitations that you get with the GNOME desktop, I suggest trying the Xfce desktop for a welcome relief. This is XRAM Tech. Thanks for watching.